Hello, and welcome to the Off-Meta Umineko Read-Along Podcast, the new weekly podcast where I guide my off-meta friends and first-time readers through my personal favorite story of all time, the highly acclaimed murder mystery visual novel, Umineko When They Cry. We'll be discussing its narrative and themes, and they will work together with our community to try and solve its various mysteries. We hope you'll join us on this exciting journey as we delve into the witch's catbox. I'm Kyle J, and joining me on our one-way trip to Rokkenjiima, we have our readers, James Capelli and Bardic. Welcome, y'all. So, how was your read this week?
I have a whole new theory. I'm going out of left wing on this one. It's not anything we've talked before. I mentioned it. I briefly mentioned it in the last episode. And I'm more invested in that I'm right.
Okay.
And I'm excited to talk about it.
I don't have anything new. I'm still sticking with my old theory. I'm interested to see what's going to happen. I think there are going to be more games to be played, and that excites me.
Oh, for sure.
Alright, well this week we're covering the final part of Umineko Episode 1, Legend of the Golden Witch, with the Tea Party and question mark sections. If you're following along with the YouTube playlist, that is video 16. If you have not caught up to that point yet, go ahead and stop the podcast and catch up before rejoining us. Or if you're just listening to us along for the ride, welcome aboard. So having reached the credits of Game 1 last time, we find ourselves in a lovely tea room where the cousins, Shannon and Cannon, are all gathered enjoying tea and cookies. Battler congratulates everyone on having completed Umineko When They Cry, and laments that he has no idea what was going on there at the end of the story. Jessica, likewise confused, posits this was some kind of bad end of sorts, because no one made any attempt to try and solve the witch's epitaph. Maria, George, and Shannon all agree that things would have turned out completely differently if everyone had just worked together on the epitaph instead of trying to protect themselves and search for the culprit. Battler is unsure, but since it's a rap party, he decides to let it go. Everyone goes around the table and laments the tragic ends they received. They specifically land on Cannon's confrontation with the culprit as a big hint, since it definitively proves there was a 19th person, and more specifically, a witch. Everyone agrees that all the crimes committed in that game couldn't have been done by anything but a witch, and apologizes to Maria for not believing her. George laments that Shannon had to die such a horrible death, but is glad that she is back with them now. He then says that he was surprised that, given its setting and setup, the story ended up being a fantasy instead of a mystery. Maria gets mad and espouses that it isn't a fantasy story because, after all, Beatrice exists. Everyone agrees that Beatrice exists, and sits down to try and solve the epitaph together. Everyone, that is, except Battler. Battler wonders why everyone just stopped thinking, and assumed that since they couldn't figure out how a human could have committed these crimes, that a witch must have done it. After all, things like witches don't actually exist in this world. No matter how strange or convoluted the crime, at the end of the day, it has to be a human using some kind of trick from the mystery genre. Everyone else is stunned by Battler's ignorance. How could this fool claim, after everything they've seen, that witches can't exist? They press him to explain what happened in the story using human tricks, and Battler falters. While he can sort of see how some of what happened might possibly have been done with a trap, or a device, or a body double, he doesn't have a clear answer for pretty much any of the crimes. The others all chastise him for stubbornly assuming that witches can't exist. Battler retorts that he refuses to accept that argument, that if he can't explain, it's all the witch. After all, just because you don't know how a light bulb shines, if you don't know the principle, that doesn't mean it's all magic. Maria laments that if a single person doesn't believe, the miracle won't occur. Battler then realizes that everyone is trying to get him to admit the witch exists because if everyone accepts the lie, it will become the truth. Maria's statement about needing everyone to believe, he says, gives away the game. After all, real miracles happen whether people believe in them or not. Any miracles or magic or witches that exist only because he believes in them are downright lies. Finally, Battler once again espouses that if a witch really wants to prove that they exist, all they need to do is appear in front of him and perform some magic. Suddenly, a refreshing and light laugh that Battler has never heard before fills the room, and Beatrice herself appears. Everyone besides Battler immediately grovels before the 1,000-year-old witch, who, on arriving, says that it's entertaining to see someone with such backbone as Battler. Battler's in shock, but decides that this Beatrice must be representative of the illusion of the witch as believed by Maria and the others. Some fictional being that will only be allowed to exist if everyone believes in them. Beatrice is surprised that Battler seems to understand so much about magic despite knowing nothing of it, and seemingly having been born with strong magic-resisting power. It would seem that Battler is the natural enemy of witches, as his impenetrable disbelief causes magic to fail. Battler once again asserts that he will never believe in a witch just because he can't determine exactly what happened on those 2 tragic days. Beatrice laughs and says that she will enjoy breaking Battler and making him kiss her toes. Beatrice challenges Battler to explain how human tricks may have been used to kill, for example, Eva and Hideyoshi in the room sealed by the chain. Shaking her golden pipe and summoning smoke of various colors to fill the room, Battler suddenly finds himself in the hall of the mansion in front of Eva and Hideyoshi's room. With this perfect recreation of the crime scene, Beatrice invites Battler to see what he could do with only such a small crack in the door to work with. Battler claims that perhaps some sort of ice pick shooting device was used, but Beatrice counters with the fact that Eva, on the bed, is not even visible from the crack in the door, let alone Hideyoshi, who is in the bathroom with the door closed. Battler struggles to come up with the theory, and Beatrice decides to just show him how she committed the murders using her magic. Summoning the 7 stakes of purgatory, she sends 2 of them shooting through the gap in the door, ricocheting around the room, before eventually striking Eva and Hideyoshi square in the forehead, their bodies falling not 1 inch from where they were found in the previous game. Returning to the tea party, suddenly the magic that maintained everyone's revived forms begins to dissolve, each of them returning to the state they were in at the end of the previous game. Shannon, with her head half destroyed, Cannon, with a stake through his chest, and each of the other cousins turned into a pile of scrap meat. With her last words, Jessica calls out to Battler not to give up. She admits they had stopped thinking because they didn't want to suspect one of their friends. They refused to face reality and gave in to the witch. She pleads to Battler to deny the witch and erase her illusory existence. With everyone else returned to corpses, only Battler and Beatrice remain. Battler's infuriated by the cruelty of the witch, and vows to defeat her no matter what it takes. Cut to credits. Then, Beatrice praises Battler, and hopes that this diversion will end her 1,000-year-long boredom. Can Battler explain what happened with human tricks, or will he end up submitting to the witch? And with that, we unlock the Tea Party of the Unhuman.
Alright, so let's dissect this a little bit. First of all, what the fuck? Second off, it's interesting, because you think, like, I can't tell if the human playing the game, if me as playing the game is part of this game or not, because it sounds like they're talking to us at the beginning, and then they aren't talking to us, and, like, I go back and forth, but it just, like, it felt like they were talking directly to us, then they just forgot about us. But I can't ever tell if they're talking to Battler or to us, and I think that's supposed to be a little confusing, but...
Yes, it's the same in the next section as well. We get a nebulous turn-to-screen talk-to-us segment as well.
Yeah.
I love the whole fourth wall break in these stories. I wish they were used deeper, and which maybe that's what this story is going for. Because there is a point near the end of 999, the first Zero Escape game, where I had a genuine theory that I, the player, was Zero. And that I was really disappointed when I wasn't it, and then I was very satisfied with the ending that we got. So it was alright, fine. A couple of video games I've played.
And then in Virtue's Last Reward, they kind of come back to that.
A little bit, yeah.
Oh, they drop it in 3 because 3 is a mess.
We're not... A whole other podcast.
We could talk about that for a while.
There's some other video games I played that kind of toy with the same concept. Like, One Shot is one, but, like, it throws that premise at you immediately, and I'm like, I'd rather be that slow reveal of, like, what the fuck am I? What? So I was excited, and then they just don't mention you again. They don't refer to you. They don't talk to you. So I'm just thinking, where is this going? Which is going to lead back into my new theory that I'm going to talk about after the question marks segment. As for this tea party, the human tea party, they screwed up in one key element that Ben caught onto, which is that they reveal the end of the tea party in the character tree.
Yep.
It tells you how Battler is a fool who couldn't accept it, and therefore all his other cousins got eaten by demons.
Yep.
And it's just like, oh, well, that's a bit of a spoiler for how it happened. Or was it an accident? Maybe it had already happened. I really do like Battler's character here. Right, the insistence of I don't believe in you into the I cannot believe in you, because to believe in you means we lose and we all die.
I get the character, especially from a storytelling perspective. If I put myself there, I'm like, I am literally talking to you right now. How can I, like, not believe in you?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a little bit of suspension of disbelief, as we talk about belief.
It's resolve, too.
But, like, I understand what he's doing, even if he's a little bit of a whiny bitch while he does it. So, he's very good at that. I don't even have the sound on. Like, I don't have the voices on, so I can't imagine what he sounds like there. So,
I really am enjoying. I mean, it's a shame you don't like it, or you can't tolerate a non-English voice that it distracts you. I'm very much enjoying the voice acting. I don't obviously speak a lick of Japanese. I know some very key words like yes and no and shit. Thank you, anime.
By the end of this, you'll learn how to say it's useless. It's all useless.
Yeah, you have taught me how to say that.
you know how to say Beatrice.
Yeah.
Boy, do I ever. I just, it's the voice acting is phenomenal. It really sells the characters, especially Maria's laugh is. Maria's always creepy when she goes into that alter personality.
Yep.
Always, always, always. One thing that has been a big mystery for me is Ben brought this up at the end of the last episode, which is what is this personality of Maria that wrote these pages and implored somebody to find the truth?
Mm-hmm.
Because her personality at the end of the scene has not reflected that whatsoever.
Right.
Kind of leading me more into the idea that this alter personality of Maria has seen multiple games already. And maybe we're going to see some more games, and then that personality that writes that segment comes back. I don't think there's going to be time travel per se, but there's going to be time travel.
I am under the impression that there is a scenario in which Maria gets to the end and solves the epitaph and gets the gold and grows up a little bit, and then in that instance, those few years is when she gets her sanity back. It's hard to say, like, sanity when you're talking about a young girl like this. Like, she's very impressionable, but, like, it obviously, if those were actually written by Maria, she has such a different way of speaking, even in the writing that was sent at the end of episode 1, at the end of game 1. So I think that it might be a different reality in which she writes those pages, not in this bad ending of game 1.
True. We don't know how canonical this world is, honestly.
Yep.
It could be another reality, or it could be my new theory, which again I'm not going to talk about yet.
All right.
Well, I want to get to it. Let's go.
All right, starting up the Inhuman Tea Party. We appear in a purple void that resolves into an ominous-looking sitting room. Beatrice manifests and offers to prepare any tea throughout history. Suddenly, another witch with blue hair appears and requests cheap dried plum tea. This wandering witch, Lady Bernkastel, says that she has no interest in violating the rules of Beatrice's territory. Bernkastel claims that her powers are no match for Beatrice's ability to kill someone endlessly. However, Beatrice flatters Bernkastel, saying that her power could never approach that of Bernkastel's, which was used to fend off the Great Witch, Lady Lambda Delta. Bernkastel claims that she merely won an endurance contest, but Beatrice calls her mock humility unseemly. The Witch Lambda Delta's power is to kill a person without fail. However, even she can't bring the odds of failure truly down to a perfect 0. Bernkastel hopes to never have to fight such a terrifying witch ever again. Beatrice then comments that Bernkastel's own power is equally infallible and terrible. The ability to manifest, without fail, anything except for 0. In other words, she can manifest any miracle, no matter how unlikely, so long as the odds are not truly 0. Bernkastel states that she's only visiting to appease her boredom. Beatrice asks what her impression is of the game, to which Bernkastel replies that Lambda Delta is terrifying because of her cruelty, but she at least understood her. Beatrice, however, seems to possess some affection of some sort, but is completely incomprehensible to Bernkastel, and thus more terrifying. Beatrice laughs and admits that she is fickle, but says that Bernkastel also likes to entrust her fate to the roll of the fickle dice. But Bernkastel disagrees, saying that when she rolls the dice, there is something she wants to come up, and thus can manifest it. Beatrice, however, anticipates all outcomes, and never lets the dice even leave her hands. Inside of Beatrice is nothing but 0, the perfect counter to Bernkastel's ability, and why she never wishes to fight her. Beatrice laughs and says that tea is best enjoyed amongst witches as it's never boring, to which Bernkastel replies, "Boredom is the sole poison that can kill me. So don't kill me, all right, Lady Beatrice, endless witch." Beatrice then leaves to bring in the chessboard of the next game, at which Bernkastel turns to address us. She says that she would like to lend us her power, but laments that it is a bad matchup against Beatrice's. However, since we are so pitiful, she will still try and help us out just a bit. She informs us that Beatrice we are seeing is not necessarily a single person. She is instead a personification of the rules of the game. By watching and learning, we can reveal her heart and then destroy her. Bernkastel warns us, though, that she has no intention of becoming our ally. She is merely lending us some aid to stave off her boredom. She claims that she is the cruelest witch in the world, and that, as her game piece, we had better not disappoint her. And with that, we have completed Umineko When They Cry, Episode 1, Legend of the Golden Witch. Returning to the title screen, we can now see that it is changed to show an underwater scene with fish. And we now have access to the full character tree for the first episode. It includes both the humans and the witches we have just met, as well as the ability to kill and resurrect each of them to see their bios and how they died. We also now have access to all the tips for Episode 1, which includes some additional information. And of course, we now have unlocked Episode 2, which we will begin next time. So, what are y'all's thoughts on the Witches' Tea Party?
Well, I believe Ben has much more to say about the unhuman tea party than I do, having gone back and read it a second time. But I have theories.
I don't know how much more I have to say about it other than just we're getting introduced to a different cast of characters that I've been waiting to see how they would be introduced. Even just from before Episode 1, you watch the intro scene and you see all these ladies, these witches that you assume are there, and you don't see them at all on Rokkenjiima. So
I don't remember that.
It depends on which intro you watched.
That is fair.
yeah.
And I believe at the time I was struggling to get my Steam Deck working with this mod, so I don't remember the anime intro much at all. Oh wait, now that I think about it, I do recall them flashing up there.
There's a couple of them, but they're in different scenes. And there's a couple of flashes of Jessica and George in it as well, and scenes that we haven't seen yet, which is why I keep going back to this time travel theory, or redo the game and restart and whatnot. So,
well, I'm certain you are correct, and that is exactly what we're going to see.
Yep.
The theory that I'm going to posit to you,
sure,
is a bit more bigger picture, even bigger than that.
Ooh.
Which is, I don't believe that this is a team mystery or a team fantasy. I believe this is a team sci-fi. I'm buckling down. All of the math and the logic talk, I don't think it's just happenstance. Could I see the story just being that grounded in a fantasy by using modern day logic and mathematics? Oh yeah, absolutely. They could go they could places that would just break our brains. I have no doubt. But I think sci-fi is going to be the plausible solution that explains how the repeats are going to occur. It's going to explain why the witches aren't all powerful. Why did Maria feel the need to show Battler how she killed Eva and Hideyoshi? Why did she need to use a bouncing projectile to kill them? Kind of proving his point where he said it had to be some sort of projectile, and she's like, you fool, you can't see them. Now watch me use this projectile, right? If she is all-powerful, Maria says there's no point in being blocked behind a door. She can phase through the door. She could have just phased through the door and killed them. She didn't. It's either because she is dramatic and likes to be a show-off, or, like we've posited before, she has rules and limitations herself, and I believe science fiction is the answer.
Also, you were saying Maria. I think you meant Beatrice.
I did mean Beatrice, not Maria.
That's okay. But yeah, I can see that, but do you how... Even so, there are things that can't be explained, at least right now.
Oh, sure.
I'm wondering, are you thinking this is a simulation type thing? What are you saying is going to be sci-fi about this?
I think because this is what I was thinking when they get to the island in the first playthrough, right? Where's the shrine? Where's the seagulls? What happened to the rose? Why was there a one flawed rose that now vanished? Right? I guess you could say that it was all preordained by Beatrice to keep Maria there so that she could hand off the umbrella and the letter. And if that is why, then I wouldn't be like that's a bad rationale. It's fine. I could see that it could be all AI that is just running the simulation over and over and over, testing the limits of human consciousness. This is also the kind of story where I could see it, the last 5 minutes of the game, you get a black screen with just like people talking you don't know that kind of hints at there is this bigger picture going on, right? I think we all can say we've seen plenty of that in our visual novels before, where it's you think you know what's going on, but we're gonna throw this wrench in, and is it really well thought out, or is it just a haha got him? I've seen both. I could see the story going that way, and if you don't like it, you don't have to read into it, and you can take it for what they present it to you as a mystery versus a fantasy story. If I'm wrong, it's not sci-fi; it is just mystery versus fantasy. I'm down for the ride. I ain't gonna be upset about that.
You. And I wouldn't be disappointed per se. I just don't think I believe it just yet.
Okay.
I'm still pretty set that I think it is a weird mixture, like kind of the title of that was the Rondo of Witch and Reasoning. It goes back and forth between this like fantasy and then adding in this logic, this like the way that the characters talk about how you can think about things, turning the chessboard around over and over. I think it's going to be a complete battle of mystical versus logical, and I can see that eventually dissolving the time loop at the end when they reach the final logic of everything. But we're only 1/4 into the questions arc of all of this, which means we got 3/4 more, 3 times more questions to be asked before we even get starting to get answers.
Yes.
And I have 2 theories actually about the overall structure of this, which is one, there's a theory that there are going to be 8 different games, and the last 4 games start to answer more questions that are asked, while the first 4 ask more questions than they answer. And then there's the second one where the first 4 are games, and the second 4 are the same games, but with the background details that were missing revealed, and they slowly start to build on each other. I do think that at some point we're going to get explanations for what happened in episode 1, and I think that using the answers arc to answer them could be an interesting perspective and storytelling mechanic.
All right.
I want to agree with you. But I feel like that outline of the story is too predictable at this point. Some wrenches are going to get thrown in. What I could see happening, right? You and I both agree that the plot rocketed towards the ending way faster than we thought for the end of game 1.
Yep.
I could see several games being played out in chapter 2.
No.
And I could see it.
I don't think so.
You don't?
Nope.
I could. I'm not going to deny it because
that's fine.
Like, what is there to really do? Battler remembers what's going on. He tries to convince them. They call him crazy. By the end, a couple of them believe. He's going to try to lock at least 5 other people in Kinzo's study, which means the sacrifice can't be completed, and he's going to fail. And he's going to be like, man, how troublesome. I couldn't even convince 5 of my family to stay safe in this locked room when we knew a killer was around.
Yep.
Right, that's going to happen. I think we're going to get to that faster than we expect. I'm also not totally convinced we're going to see exactly the same set of characters.
Oh, I am.
I don't know. We probably are. But
yep.
It's one of those things that if I say it now, I sound smart if I'm right.
No, I mean, go for it. My thinking is that we don't yet know how Bernkastel's little luck or whatever that she gave us affects the story yet. But it changes one of the events that leads into everything happening. Maybe it changes Battler's perspective. Maybe episode 2 is Battler trying to convince, I've seen all this happen, we can't do the same thing again. And people not believing him, but it makes the story go a different way. And I legitimately am sticking with the 6 people who are murdered at first that kick off this entire thing are random. And I put that in quotation marks because obviously it's scripted by the story. But are meant to be a catalyst for the rest of the story happening. And I think that it's always going to be the 6, then the 2, then the 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. With the 2 plus the 5 ones being the 7 deadly sins, which we talked. It was mentioned in our little outline here that they are the 7 deadly sins. We had a little bit of a back and forth, and you can kind of make a reasoning that each of the characters that died by stake exhibited one of those deadly sins, with Ava and Hideyoshi being greed and lust, because they were just doing the dirty.
Kraus would be lust if anyone. Well, but he didn't die by one of the sins.
Yeah.
I mean, the greed stake can hit literally anybody. It could kill all of them.
Yeah, pretty much.
I don't think it can hit everyone, because I don't think it would hit Canon. I don't think it would hit Genji.
It would hit any of Kinzo's children.
Yes, I agree with that. But then there's like Sloth with Kumasawa. There's Pride with possibly Genji. Like, I just think that a different story with the same outline is going to play out at least 3 more times, maybe 6 or 7.
I agree. I just don't think it's going to be 1 per chapter. At least even for chapter 2.
Oh, I think it's going to be 1 per chapter, and you're going to learn different things each time.
Yeah, we'll see.
Here's what the story... I'm going to call this one. One thing is going to happen where Battler's going to go in, and he's going to be one of the 6 to die, and it's just going to be like, damn it, and then he goes right back in, and it's just going to be a throwaway joke. And I'm excited for that, and it's to prove that, yeah, the first 6 are random. It doesn't matter that Beatrice likes him or anything like that. I think that's just going to... It is what it is.
Interesting. Okay.
I think we're going to get stuff like that. So I could see them rapid firing into the key elements of these stories that, I don't need to have them sit around and talk about their Japanese characters of their names like all over again.
I don't think that they're going to talk about it.
I can promise that we will not be seeing that part again.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, not just that, but a lot of that introductory stuff where they're all going to be treating Battler like you haven't been around for 6 years, and he's going to be walking into this being, I watched all of you die. We don't need to do the surface level stuff. I know what you've been up to. Your grades suck. Your grades are great. You're creepy as hell. You don't need to do that anymore.
We also don't know how much Battler's going to retain. Like,
that is true.
We don't know that Battler isn't going to go in and be like, oh yeah, let's do this all again. They'll skip all the text, of course, but like they'll get to a part that it changes it, like where Bernkastel
becomes more of a deja vu thing for him rather than.
Yeah, there are a variety of ways to handle that kind of thing.
We've seen stuff like that even in I don't know if you've played AI the Somnium Files.
Yes, unfortunately I have.
Oh, you didn't like it?
It's very silly.
Oh, I love AI, but we'll talk after this. I could talk forever about AI. It's something like that where it's just like a reminiscent, like, where did that knowledge come from? And I think that they might do something like that alters the course of one major event that changes everything.
Maybe. I'd be happy with that too.
Maybe.
Well, we shall see.
I would be remiss if I didn't add the fact it cracks me up that nobody gives a shit about Goda being dead the whole time. 2 lines being like, if Ogoto's here, he could cook. That is it. No one cares about him, which just tickles me pink.
Yeah, I think it's emblematic of the way he acts.
I'm excited to see people care about him later. I think that he's going to become a different character once he actually survives this first little bit, because we don't get to see him after the killings have happened.
True. We don't really see him in the context of...
But if he dies every time, that would also be very funny.
That would be very funny. I agree, but
we never need to develop this guy.
See, they even talk... My favorite thing was that in that first part, literally the first couple of things in the Tea Party is like, well, Shannon seemed like such a developed character. Why did she have to die so fast? And I'm like... Yeah, I agree. We were asking a bunch of this. I think a lot of that Tea Party was like Kyle talking to me, in a sense, with like leading questions.
Yes! Oh, that's such a good descriptor. Yes!
And I'm like, I know exactly where this is going, so...
I think we're dead on that Shannon is a bit in on what's going on and chose to sacrifice herself for the cause.
I agree.
Because her whole demeanor and conversation in the Tea Party was very weird. More so than, like, everybody else.
But was the Tea Party even real? Like...
That is a question.
I could see it being on an illusion.
Yeah, I mean, was the Tea Party even real for the people that weren't Maria, George, Jessica, Battler? Like...
Yeah, I think Shannon Cannon were supposedly conjured by witch magic. Right? That's the gift she gave.
Yeah, and then shown to die to try to convince, yeah.
Well, allow me to give a little bit of context for that scene, as y'all have probably not played this author's previous work, Higurashi When They Cry. In that series, at the end of each episode, there was a similar, like, after-party section that was basically the characters would talk like they're actors in the VN and discuss a bit about what happened in the game. But in those segments, it was always just kind of tongue-in-cheek, like, here's a little bonus thing, here's maybe some hints about the story that's coming up, that kind of thing.
This is definitely not canon.
But then in this one, we've got actual plot happening.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a layered world on top of the game itself. So how much of this do you think is real? How much of this do you think is actually canonical to the story?
I don't know yet.
I think it's canonical, but I think it's only going to affect Beatrice and Battler.
Okay.
Maybe Maria?
I actually want to touch on one point, that Capelli said earlier, that Battler could die in the first 6. I don't think Battler can be touched by Beatrice. There was a throwaway line...
Because of his spiritual resistance.
Yeah, I don't think that he will ever be selected by the Demon's Roulette. I don't think he'll ever be one of the 7 that gets hit by the stake, because he doesn't exhibit any of the deadly sins that...
Lust?
I think that's more of a... I don't know.
Is whining a deadly sin?
No, sadly not. And it just... I think that overall, Battler is going to be the consistent key word for getting to the end of all 4/8/6/7 games of this.
Yeah.
So
I think you're onto something there too. I forgot about that little back and forth. That's going to be incredibly significant.
Yep.
One thing I caught on episode 1 that I'm very proud of is the character design between Battler and Maria. The crosses. That Maria's hat has a black cross and Battler's zipper has an upside down white cross.
Interesting.
Shows yin and yang, shows competing parties.
I think they're going to end up being extremely important to each other throughout this entire thing.
Yeah, I think the way this next game is going to go, either Battler's going to retain a lot or a little, and it's going to come back to him, and he and Maria are going to have moments of she's going to be wondering, you know something, and he's going to be wondering, what are you about? And I think that's how we're going to have things emerge with Battler. If he doesn't just straight up remember, if he does, it's just going to be a point of contention, which he's going to need to be the adult and resist so that he can try to convince others of what's going on is really very important.
So, what are y'all's thoughts on the witch Bernkastel? And that also is a reference to the author's previous work. They are based off of a character from Higurashi, although you don't have to have read those works to understand it.
I know so little about her and what she could be or represent that I don't really have theories. Third party of witches, talking about Lambda Delta as a witch name, I was like, so they're sorority witches. But unlike a lot of witch lore stories, they don't talk about being covens. They don't talk about being sisters. They just exist.
Yeah, just that boredom can kill them. That's about it.
Well, her, yeah, or them, I guess. And how literal is that?
Well, it says if you go to the character screen, which is updated with the witches after you complete the question mark section, you can like sacrifice and revive people.
Yep.
And you can do that for the witches as well.
Yep.
If you do it for Bernkastel, it basically says, when I stop thinking, I am dead, but I can always start thinking again.
Yep. It really gets into the thought process of who is keeping these witches alive. Like, Beatrice is alive because someone has believed in her for the past 100 years, or however long Kinzo has seen her, and wanted her to be alive. So that's the only reason Beatrice is actually here in the present, is that it slowly starts to expand into more and more people, but can't be full until Mr. Battler believes. And I think Bernkastel is actually focused more on herself and keeping herself entertained to keep herself alive.
Do you think we're going to see other witches?
Yes.
I mean, you may have seen some of them in the, in the spoilerific intro video.
Kinda, but also the credits have someone credited for Lambda Delta.
True, they do.
So, I remember, I didn't remember seeing Bernkastel, but I saw Lambda Delta, and I'm like, what the fuck is a Lambda Delta? Like, I was just really confused, and then when her name gets brought up, I was just like, alright, well, we're gonna see more and more of these witches come in and affect the story in different ways, I think, and influence the outcome of the game to possibly eventually take down Beatrice.
Yeah, so here's my question for you, Ben. Theory time. Will Beatrice live to Chapter 8?
Yes.
I think so, too.
I think Beatrice is definitely going to live to Chapter 8. I think... I think that the final showdown is going to be a bunch of the witches plus Battler against Beatrice, personally. I think that a lot of the witches are actually scared of Beatrice. Or, I guess her actual name is Beto? Or Bito?
I thought that was like a nickname.
Maybe. We'll see.
I could see the witches being a harmony of checks and balances. Right. Bernkastel was saying that Beatrice and Lambda Delta were a good pairing for each other as far as power scaling, whereas Beatrice would trounce Bernkastel, she said. So would Bernkastel trounce Lambda Delta? And
It's implied that Bernkastel beat Lambda Delta, and Bernkastel claims that Beatrice would beat Bernkastel, but that Lambda Delta would beat Beatrice.
So there you go. So you have this rock, paper, scissors dynamic, and now you have this brand new, random fourth element in Battler. I'm excited to see where it goes. I want to watch this family die all over again.
The question of, is this a mystery or is it a fantasy, both became the focus and also kind of irrelevant after this point in the story, right? It kind of got explicitly asked in the Tea Party of the Humans, at least, where Battler came out pretty much as 100% this is a mystery story. But at the same time, we're shown directly fantastical elements in the form of Beatrice and the witches. So
are we?
There seem to be different kind of levels of existence that we're kind of shown, right? We're shown we have the island where the story takes place. We have this special room of witches, right? Clearly, the room with witches in it has magic in it. Do you think there is magic on the island itself? Do you think magic exists in there, or is Battler correct in saying that it's all tricks?
My rational side wants to say that it's all tricks.
Me too.
My meta side says it can't be an interesting story for another 100 hours of reading with that.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm really stuck on that. Like, I don't know what direction they're gonna take this. Like, obviously there's some sort of mystical influence just in the game itself, but on the island itself, I have no idea. Because the one thing I didn't think about until they said it was, I do think that there is still a 19th person on the island. Like, period. But there could have been traps set up in some way, like the like cannon hit a tripwire, and that's why the one stake went into his head. But everything just felt so perfect that, like, I don't know. I definitely am stuck on that question.
Well, I mean, the story is described as a game, right?
Yeah.
And then Beatrice goes to get the next chessboard, almost like she's prepared these games in advance. So the idea that these things are kind of laid out in a somewhat prescribed manner is not outrageous to think.
Sure, but then, in my opinion, that's still magic in getting these chessboards set up in the real world.
Sure. All right, and then one last thing I wanted to ask is, do you have any updated thoughts on the Eva Hideyoshi murder now that we've seen it recreated in front of us?
Why are you asking us this? You're going to make me start reading into things that I don't want to read into yet. Why are you asking me this?
Yeah, this is a suspicious question. I don't know. I don't have any updated thoughts. No, I don't, Kyle.
I do. Here's the thing. Why show Battler how she did it at all?
I mean, that's what Battler's been asking for, right? He's like, just show me magic and I'll believe you.
In this golden land is the only place we've actually seen this magic. I could start thinking of a lot of theories, again, that just resolve in traps. It's not an interesting theory, but plausibility is what matters. The whole... it's the Sherlock Holmes line, right? Once you eliminate the possible, whatever's impossible is what remains. And the impossible thing is that somehow there's a murder. Right as soon as we started reading the Tea Party, I messaged Ben and I said, someone can easily have just been hiding in that room. Under the bed. Like, they didn't check anywhere, again, because... so there are lots of reasonings that you could do it. There's magic only seen in the Golden Land so far. The Golden Land existing is kind of magic in a sense, but I'll safely fall back on my sci-fi theory in the meantime.
All right, I think that covers everything I wanted to ask. This is, of course, a pretty mind-bending section, and of course, we'll find out a lot more about the structure of the story as we head into Chapter 2. I think that will elucidate a lot of y'all's questions about what exactly this story is. And so, for next time, we'll be restarting Episode 2, Turn of the Golden Witch. Hey, Kyle J, Witch of Editing here, to give a quick correction. We will not be starting Episode 2 of Umineko just yet. We've got a couple of new readers, Haley and Becca, joining us on the podcast, and we wanted to get their thoughts on Episode 1, Legend of the Golden Witch, before they join the podcast proper moving forwards. We'll also be talking about some of the community theories that have been posted in the Discord, so that should be fun. The week after that, we will be taking a break before we come back to start Episode 2 of Umineko the week following. So if you're behind on your reading, that would be a good time to catch up. Alright, that's all from me. I'll let Peace version of me close out the podcast. Which will be about 3 to 3.5 hours to the VN, ending when we get to the first day, October 4th, 1986. And that is videos 17 through 19 of the YouTube playlist.
What? What?
Yeah, I want to stop there, because that right there is like, wait, when did we start the first day last time?
Immediately!
Yeah, so where are we starting? I don't know!
We'll see.
Interesting.
Maybe the time travel theory is being proven just right off the bat.
Dang it. Well, I'm gonna have to immediately go play this, don't I?
Alright, well I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And I hope you all at home will enjoy it as well. And remember to think off meta.